The massive harvester ship of the Vexnar Collective descended on the lunar colony like a predatory leviathan, its crystalline hull refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns that belied its destructive purpose. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood perfectly still in the reinforced observation deck, her augmented eyes tracking every microscopic detail of the approaching vessel. Lunar Colony Epsilon 7 was more than just a mining outpost. It was humanity's most advanced forward research station, a testament to their ability to transform the most inhospitable environments into centers of innovation. The colony spread across 3 interconnected biodomes, each a marvel of engineering that looked deceptively fragile against the stark lunar landscape. Incoming transmission. Lieutenant Raj Mehta's voice cut through the tense silence. Vexnar Standard Communication Protocol. Maya's lips curved into a slight smile. Standard. Always standard. The aliens had no concept of the chaos humanity could unleash. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the insectoid features of the Vexnar fleet commander. Its multiple compound eyes shifted and refracted, translating complex biochemical signals into a stilted human language. Lunar Colony Epsilon 7. The translation matrix rendered the aliens' communication in a cold, mechanical tone. You will comply with Resource Extraction Protocol 7 Alpha. Resistance is mathematically improbable. Surrender all technological and biological resources. Compensation will be processed at standard market rates. In the command center, a ripple of suppressed excitement moved through the human crew. They had been waiting for this moment. Maya's hand moved almost imperceptibly, triggering a series of quantum-encrypted signals embedded in the colony's infrastructure. Beneath the lunar regolith, a network of systems that had been decades in preparation began to awaken. "Commander," a young technician named Area Chen called out, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "Prometheus Protocol is online. Quantum entanglement matrices are at 98% synchronization." The Vexnar harvester continued its approach, massive gravitational displacement engines creating a visible distortion in the lunar landscape. Automated defense systems of every known galactic civilization would have already powered down, preparing for inevitable occupation. But humanity wasn't every known civilization. In the research levels deep beneath the lunar surface, Dr. Kai Zhang watched multiple probability matrices simultaneously. Each potential outcome flickered like quantum ghosts, some showing total destruction, others revealing the most improbable forms of resistance. "Probability resonance is stable," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. "Quantum uncertainty is our weapon." The first wave of Vexnar boarding pods detached from the harvester, their ceramic alloy shells designed to pierce through most known defensive technologies. They moved with a precision that had conquered thousands of worlds, each pod a mathematical certainty of invasion. Except this time, they were entering a system designed by humans. Maya's voice was calm, almost conversational. "Activate Distributed Resistance Protocol. Stage 1. Beneath the lunar surface, something impossible began to happen. Quantum-entangled defense systems materialized where mathematical models suggested they could not exist. Probability fields began to bend, creating defensive matrices that shifted and transformed faster than any known tracking system could comprehend. The first boarding pods encountered something entirely unexpected. As they approached what should have been standard colonial defenses, the very fabric of physical probability began to twist. Laser targeting systems found their coordinates constantly shifting. Shield generators appeared in locations that defied existing physical models. Lieutenant Mehta's console erupted in a cascade of impossible data. Multiple quantum state variations detected. The boarding pods, they're experiencing simultaneous potential trajectories. In less than 47 seconds, the Vexnar would learn that humanity was anything but a passive target. The lunar colony was about to become a demonstration of why no civilization in the galaxy truly understood the potential of human innovation. The spark of defiance was about to become an inferno. Dr. Kai Zhang's research complex was unlike any scientific facility in human history. Located in a reinforced cavern deep beneath the Atacama Desert, it was a nexus of impossible potential, a place where the boundaries of known physics were not just challenged, but systematically dismantled. Probability cascade is approaching critical synchronization. Area Chen called out, her voice a mix of scientific precision and barely contained excitement. Around her, holographic displays twisted and morphed, showing multiple potential realities simultaneously. Kai watched the quantum computation matrix with the intensity of a surgeon. The Prometheus Unbound project was more than a scientific endeavor. It was humanity's ultimate insurance policy against galactic extinction. What the alien civilizations didn't understand was that humans didn't just adapt to challenges. They rewrote the fundamental rules of engagement. The first signs of the Vexnar invasion's breakdown began to filter through their monitoring systems. On the lunar colony, the boarding pods were experiencing quantum uncertainty at a level that defied all known physical models. Each pod existed in multiple potential states simultaneously, arriving, not arriving, fragmenting, merging, a nightmare of probabilistic interference. "We're getting live feeds from Epsilon 7, shouted Miguel Rodriguez, the system's primary data integration specialist. His fingers flew across interfaces that seemed to breathe and pulse with living information. The Vexnar tracking systems are completely compromised. Kai allowed himself a tight smile. Years of work, decades of theoretical research, generations of human innovation had led to this moment. The Prometheus Unbound project was built on a revolutionary understanding. Reality was not a fixed state, but a negotiable construct. Their breakthrough had come from an unexpected convergence of disciplines. Quantum physicists working alongside neuroscientists, computational experts collaborating with cultural anthropologists, genetic researchers partnering with theoretical mathematicians. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to break down disciplinary barriers. Initiating Phase 2, Area announced. Her hand moved across a holographic interface that seemed to respond to her touch like a living organism. The quantum computation matrix began to pulse with an almost organic rhythm. In the lunar colony, the effect was immediate and spectacular. The Vexnar boarding pods began to experience total systemic failure, but it wasn't a simple electronic shutdown. Instead, each pod began to exist in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously functional and non-functional, arriving and not arriving. Lieutenant Raj Mehta's voice crackled through the communication systems. "They're confused. Completely and utterly confused." Kai understood why. The Prometheus Unbound system wasn't just a defensive mechanism. It was a complete reimagining of how reality could be perceived and manipulated. Each quantum state was being dynamically generated, creating a defense mechanism that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. "We're not just defending," Kai muttered to himself. "We're teaching them a lesson about the nature of existence." The research team worked with a synchronized precision that seemed almost superhuman. Miguel manipulated probability fields, Area managed quantum synchronization, and a dozen other specialists performed tasks that would have been considered impossible just a decade earlier. "Probability interference is reaching critical mass," Miguel reported. "The Vexnar tracking systems are experiencing total computational breakdown." On the lunar colony, the aliens were experiencing something beyond technological defeat. They were confronting a fundamental challenge to their understanding of reality itself. Each boarding pod now existed in a state of quantum uncertainty, so profound that their most advanced tracking systems simply could not comprehend what was happening. Kaijon watched the data streams with the calm of someone who had just changed the fundamental rules of universal engagement. The Vexnar hadn't just encountered resistance. They had encountered a species capable of turning the very fabric of reality into a weapon. "Prometheus Unbound is working perfectly," Area said, her voice a mixture of scientific triumph and something deeper, a profound understanding that they had just demonstrated humanity's true potential. The breakthrough moment had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Confederation's war room was a marvel of technological integration. a massive spherical chamber where holographic representations of multiple stellar civilizations flickered like fragile soap bubbles. Representatives from over 200 advanced species watched in growing horror as their carefully constructed invasion plans began to unravel. Commander Elena Kovacs stood at the center of a holographic display, her posture a study in controlled intensity. She wasn't just a military strategist. She was an architect of impossibility. "Target acquisition compromised," announced Specialist Zora Lin, her fingers dancing across quantum-encrypted interfaces. "The Vexnar invasion fleet is experiencing total systemic breakdown." The Confederation had been planning this assault for decades. Earth was supposed to be a simple resource acquisition, a primitive world ripe for harvesting. They had compiled centuries of data, run millions of strategic simulations, calculated every possible defensive scenario. They had been catastrophically wrong. In the command centers of the alien consortium, panic began to spread. The human resistance wasn't just effective, it was fundamentally incomprehensible. Their defensive systems didn't just block attacks, they transformed the very nature of those attacks. Admiral Kathax of the Zornak Imperium watched his fleet's targeting systems collapse. Quantum entanglement fields created by the humans turned their most advanced weapon systems into nothing more than expensive space debris. Entire battle groups found themselves redirected by probability manipulations that defied every known law of strategic engagement. "It's like they're fighting a war in dimensions we can't even perceive," muttered Liaison Chtell, a senior strategist from the Crystalline Collective. But humanity was doing more than just defending. In a small, unassuming control center buried beneath the Brazilian rainforest, a team of human hackers was conducting a different kind of warfare. Led by Marcus Alvarez, a brilliant computational specialist with a background in cultural anthropology and memetic engineering, they were weaponizing information in ways no galactic civilization had ever imagined. "Initiating cultural infiltration protocol," Marcus called out. His team wasn't just intercepting alien communications, they were rewriting them. The Vexnar communication networks began to experience something impossible. Their own transmission systems were being used against them, injecting carefully crafted memetic payloads that exploited deep psychological vulnerabilities in their collective consciousness. Alien fleet communications became a nightmare of contradictory orders. Strategic priorities blurred. Internal conflict algorithms were triggered, turning the invasion force against itself. On the lunar colony, Captain Maya Rodriguez watched the unfolding chaos with a strategic calm that would have been impossible for any other species. The distributed resistance protocol was more than a defensive strategy. It was a complete reimagining of warfare. "They're trying to understand us," she said to Lieutenant Rajmeta. "And that's their fundamental weakness." The alien civilizations had made a critical mistake. They had viewed humanity as a singular, predictable entity. What they encountered was a species that fought like a thousand-headed hydra. Each blow met with an entirely unexpected counterstrike. Dr. Kai Jung's quantum probability matrices were working overtime. Each potential alien strategy was not just anticipated but dynamically restructured. The humans weren't just defending. They were actively reshaping the very probability of conflict. Probability interference reaching maximum synchronization. Area Chen reported from the Atacama Research Complex. The quantum computation matrix was transforming the entire conflict into a living, breathing system of adaptive resistance. In less than 72 hours, the most advanced invasion force in galactic history had been completely dismantled, not through overwhelming force, but through a demonstration of adaptability that bordered on the supernatural. The Galactic Confederation watched in growing terror as their carefully constructed plans dissolved. Humanity wasn't just resisting. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of engagement. The galactic chess game had a new, utterly unpredictable player. And the universe would never be the same. The global network of human resistance wasn't a traditional military infrastructure. It was a living, breathing organism of innovation that spanned continents, orbits, and quantum dimensions. In a makeshift command center constructed within the heart of the Amazon rainforest, Sophia Nakamura watched multiple holographic displays with an intensity that bordered on meditation. Her team, a collection of the world's most brilliant hackers, programmers, and cultural engineers, was about to unleash a form of warfare that would redefine conflict itself. Target acquisition complete, whispered Jinwei, a cybersecurity prodigy whose fingers moved like liquid lightning across quantum-encrypted interfaces. We're about to turn their entire communication network into our playground. The alien civilizations had committed a fatal error. They viewed technological warfare as a linear concept. Attack, defend, counterattack. Humanity saw technology as a living ecosystem of possibility. Across the globe, seemingly unconnected systems began to synchronize. A weather monitoring station in Antarctica, a deep-sea research platform in the Pacific, a quantum computing center in Mumbai, a cultural research institute in Sao Paulo. Each became a node in a distributed network of resistance that defied traditional understanding. Marcus Alvarez, now coordinating with Sophia's team, had developed what they called the Mimetic Cascade Protocol, a weaponization of information that went far beyond simple hacking. We're not just breaking their systems, Marcus explained to his team. We're fundamentally restructuring their understanding of reality. The first wave of their attack was subtle. Alien communication networks began to experience microscopic inconsistencies. A transmission would arrive with slightly altered metadata. A strategic command would contain imperceptibly shifted context. To most systems, these would be nothing more than minor glitches. But to a species that relied on absolute computational precision, these were existential threats. In orbit around Jupiter, a team led by Dr. Elena Vargas was conducting an even more audacious operation. Using a network of quantum-entangled satellites, they began to manipulate the very probability fields of alien technological systems. Initiating quantum interference cascade, Elena called out. The satellites, which looked like nothing more than standard communication relays, began to generate probability fields that would make quantum physicists weep with both terror and joy. Alien battle fleets found their most advanced navigation systems experiencing total existential breakdown. A Zornak battleship attempting to plot an attack trajectory would suddenly find itself calculating multiple simultaneous potential courses, each more impossible than the last. On the ground, in the Brazilian Rainforest Command Center, Sophia Nakamura allowed herself a slight smile. They think they're fighting a technological war, she muttered, but we're fighting a war of imagination. The alien consortium's first response was typical of their computational mindset. They attempted to isolate and neutralize the source of the interference, but humanity's distributed network had no single point of failure. It was adaptive, living, constantly reshaping itself. A single programmer working from a small apartment in Buenos Aires managed to redirect an entire alien battle fleet into the corona of a nearby star. Another team, operating from a research station in the Antarctic, used advanced cultural mimicry to trigger internal conflicts within the alien invasion force. The technological warfare wasn't just about destruction. It was about demonstration. Humanity was showing the galaxy that technology was more than just a tool. It was an extension of creativity, of cultural imagination, of the fundamental human ability to see beyond existing paradigms. Mimetic cascade at 87% synchronization, Jinwei reported. The alien communication networks were no longer just compromised. They were being transformed into a canvas of human innovation. Dr. Kai Zheng, monitoring from the Atacama Research Complex, understood the deeper significance. This wasn't just a defensive action. It was a fundamental reimagining of technological engagement. We're not just fighting, Kai said to his team. We're teaching them an entirely new language of existence. The technological warfare had begun, and the galaxy would never understand conflict the same way again. The Galactic Confederation's primary communication hub was a marvel of technological integration, a massive spherical structure orbiting a neutron star designed to be the most secure communication network in known existence. Dr. Isham Beek watched its holographic representations with a predator's intensity. "Prepare the cognitive dissonance protocol," she commanded, her voice calm and precise. Her team was unlike any psychological warfare unit in history. Anthropologists worked alongside quantum linguists. Memetic engineers collaborated with cultural psychologists. Neuroscientists partnered with game theorists. This was humanity's most potent weapon, the ability to understand and manipulate the very fabric of cognitive perception. The alien civilizations had conquered thousands of worlds. They had developed computational systems that could predict entire cultural evolutions with terrifying precision. They believed they understood the psychology of resistance. They were catastrophically wrong. The first phase of the psychological attack was subtle. Alien communication networks began to receive transmissions that were simultaneously familiar and impossible. Strategic command channels were infiltrated with messages that perfectly mimicked official communication protocols, but contained microscopic inconsistencies that would drive computational minds to existential despair. Cognitive stress levels in Vexnar command structures are approaching critical instability, reported Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, a specialist in xenopsychological warfare. His display showed multiple alien communication networks experiencing what could only be described as a collective nervous breakdown. The human team wasn't just intercepting communications, they were rewriting the very language of conflict. Each transmission was a carefully crafted work of psychological art. A message would arrive with perfect syntactical structure, but contain philosophical implications that would cause entire alien computational systems to enter recursive loops of self-doubt. Strategic directives would include linguistic patterns that triggered deep-seated evolutionary uncertainties. In the Atacama Research Complex, Dr. Kai Zhang monitored the psychological cascade with scientific fascination. "We're not just fighting," he explained to his team. "We're exposing the fundamental fragility of their cognitive structures." The alien races had evolved in environments of absolute computational certainty. Humanity introduced the concept of radical uncertainty. Zara Lin, a linguistic engineer, had developed what they called quantum communication vectors, transmission methods that existed in multiple simultaneous states of meaning. A single message could be interpreted differently depending on the computational context of the receiver. "They're experiencing what we call an existential crisis," Marcus Rodriguez noted, watching the alien communication networks begin to fragment. The psychological warfare went deeper than simple disruption. It was a fundamental challenge to the alien civilization's understanding of intelligence itself. Alien fleet commanders began to receive transmissions that perfectly mimicked their own communication protocols, but contained subtle philosophical challenges that triggered deep-seated cognitive uncertainties. Strategic directives would include linguistic patterns that caused recursive loops of self-analysis, initiating cultural resonance cascade. Aisha Mbake announced. The human team had spent years studying the psychological structures of the alien civilizations. They understood something profound, that true warfare was fought in the realm of perception, not just physical conflict. Alien communication networks began to experience what could only be described as a collective nervous breakdown. Entire fleet command structures found themselves trapped in recursive loops of philosophical uncertainty. Strategic directives became contaminated with linguistic patterns that triggered deep evolutionary doubts. "We're not destroying them," Kai Zhang observed. "We're forcing them to question the very nature of their existence." The psychological warfare reached its peak when the aliens began to receive transmissions that were simultaneously a perfect match to their communication protocols and completely incomprehensible. Messages that existed in multiple states of meaning that could be interpreted differently based on the most minute computational context. Dr. Aisha Mbake watched the holographic displays with a sense of profound satisfaction. Humanity wasn't just resisting. They were teaching the galaxy an entirely new language of existence. The psychological warfare had begun, and the aliens were about to learn that true intelligence was far more complex than they had ever imagined. The Galactic Confederation's Emergency Summit was unlike any diplomatic gathering in known history. Holographic representatives from 200 stellar civilizations materialized in a massive quantum-stabilized chamber, their collective anxiety creating a palpable tension that seemed to warp the very fabric of the room. Dr. Elena Chen stood at the center of the chamber, holding neither weapon nor diplomatic credentials. She was a quantum anthropologist, a discipline that didn't even exist before humanity's emergence on the galactic stage. "You wanted to understand us," she began, her voice calm and utterly devoid of aggression. "So let me explain." The holographic displays began to shift, revealing layers of information that defied traditional computational logic. It wasn't a presentation. It was an assault of understanding. Kai Zhang and his team from the Atacama Research Complex had prepared something unprecedented. The presentation wasn't just a demonstration of human capabilities. It was a fundamental challenge to every existing model of intelligence in the galaxy. Each alien civilization saw something different in the holographic displays. The silicon-based Kroner perceived intricate computational patterns that seemed to breathe with living complexity. The energy matrix Zelhari witnessed probability cascades that challenged their most fundamental understanding of existence. The crystalline intelligences of the Void Collective observed information structures that existed in multiple simultaneous states of meaning. "We are not a species," Elena explained, her words carefully constructed to penetrate multiple levels of linguistic and computational understanding. "We are a process of continuous reimagination." The human demonstration went beyond traditional technological showcases. It was a living, breathing example of intelligence as a dynamic, adaptive system. Dr. Aisha Mbik had prepared the psychological component of the presentation. Each transmission contained layers of meaning that would take alien computational systems years to fully unpack. It wasn't just information. It was an invitation to a fundamentally different way of understanding existence. "Our resistance was never about survival," Elena continued. "It was about demonstrating the nature of true intelligence." The Vexnar representative, a massive crystalline entity that typically communicated through precise mathematical algorithms, found itself experiencing something impossible. The human presentation was simultaneously a strategic report, a philosophical treatise, a mathematical proof, and a work of profound artistic expression. Commander Maya Rodriguez watched from a secondary monitoring station. This wasn't a diplomatic meeting. It was an evolutionary demonstration. The quantum probability matrices developed by Kai Zhang's team began to generate live visualizations that defied computational logic. Each display showed multiple potential realities simultaneously, not as theoretical constructs, but as living, breathing potentialities. "Intelligence is not about prediction," Elena explained. "It's about continuous adaptation. It's about seeing potential where others see limitation." The alien civilizations began to realize something profound. Humanity wasn't just another species to be cataloged or conquered. They were a fundamental force of universal potential. Marcus Alvarez, the mimetic warfare specialist, had prepared the final layer of the presentation. Embedded within the holographic displays were communication vectors that would continue to evolve long after the initial presentation. Each alien civilization would find itself unpacking layers of human understanding for decades to come. The Galactic Confederation's most advanced computational systems struggled to process what they were experiencing. This wasn't a military demonstration. It wasn't even a technological showcase. It was a living, breathing redefinition of intelligence itself. "We are not exceptional," Elena said, her final statement a profound philosophical provocation. "We are simply demonstrating the potential that exists within adaptive intelligence." The chamber fell into a silence that transcended sound. Each alien representative was experiencing a simultaneous moment of collective realization. Humanity had not just defended itself. It had fundamentally challenged every existing model of intelligence in the galaxy. Dr. Kai Zhang, monitoring from the Atacama Research Complex, allowed himself a slight smile. They had done more than resist an invasion. They had opened the galaxy's eyes to a new understanding of what intelligence could be. The turning point had arrived. and nothing would ever be the same. The aftermath of the human demonstration rippled across the galaxy like a quantum shockwave. What had begun as an invasion had transformed into something far more profound, a fundamental redefinition of intelligent life. Deep within the Void Collective's primary computational matrix, senior analysts worked tirelessly to comprehend the human presentation. What they discovered terrified and fascinated them in equal measure. Humanity wasn't a species to be understood through traditional analytical models. They were a living, evolving concept of intelligence itself. Commander Elena Kovacs stood before the Galactic Confederation's Evolutionary Assessment Committee, a body that had not changed its fundamental operational protocols in over 3,000 years. Her presence alone was a disruption. "We're not here to be recognized," she began, her words carefully calibrated to penetrate multiple levels of computational and biological understanding. "We're here to demonstrate the potential of adaptive intelligence." The committee chamber was a marvel of technological integration, a spherical space where holographic representations of various stellar civilizations flickered like living, breathing entities. Each representation experienced the human presentation differently. The silicon-based Kronar perceived intricate computational patterns. The energy matrix Zelhari witnessed probability cascades that challenged their most fundamental understanding of existence. Dr. Kai Zhang and his team from the Atacama Research Complex had prepared something unprecedented. The quantum probability matrices they had developed were more than just predictive tools. They were living demonstrations of intelligence as a dynamic, continuous process. Zara Lin, the linguistic engineer who had developed the quantum communication vectors, presented a series of transmissions that existed simultaneously in multiple states of meaning. Each message was a work of profound complexity, part mathematical proof, part philosophical treatise, part artistic expression. The alien civilizations began to understand something profound. The human resistance wasn't just about survival. It was a demonstration of intelligence as a continuously evolving concept. Dr. Aisha Meek's psychological warfare team had transformed their approach into something far more nuanced. They weren't just disrupting alien communication systems. They were providing a masterclass in adaptive intelligence. Intelligence is not a fixed state, Elena explained to the committee. It's a continuous process of reimagination. The Vexnar representative, a massive crystalline entity that typically communicated through precise mathematical algorithms, found itself experiencing something impossible. The human presentation defied every existing model of intelligence and communication. Marcus Alvarez, the mimetic warfare specialist, had embedded layers of communication within the presentation that would continue to evolve long after the initial demonstration. Each alien civilization would spend decades, perhaps centuries, unpacking the profound implications of what humanity had shown them. The Galactic Confederation's most advanced computational systems struggled to process the depth of human potential. This wasn't just a technological demonstration. It was a living, breathing redefinition of what intelligence could be. Captain Maya Rodriguez monitored the proceedings from a secondary station, understanding the deeper significance of what was happening. Humanity had transformed a potential extinction event into an evolutionary breakthrough. The quantum computation matrix developed by Kai Zhang's team generated live visualizations that defied computational logic. Each display showed multiple potential realities simultaneously, not as theoretical constructs, but as living, breathing potentialities. "We are offering you a new understanding of existence," Elena continued. Her words were simultaneously a diplomatic statement, a scientific treatise, and a philosophical provocation. The committee chamber fell into a silence that transcended sound. Each representative was experiencing a simultaneous moment of collective realization. Humanity had not just defended itself. It had fundamentally challenged every existing model of intelligence in the galaxy. Dr. Elena Chen, the quantum anthropologist who had first presented their capabilities, watched with a sense of profound satisfaction. They had done more than resist an invasion. They had opened the galaxy's eyes to a new understanding of potential. The recognition was complete. But this was more than simple acknowledgement. It was a transformation of the fundamental understanding of what intelligence could be. Humanity had become more than a species. They had become a process of continuous reimagination. The galaxy would never be the same. The ceremony of recognition was unlike any diplomatic event in galactic history. It wasn't held in a traditional conference chamber or a sterile diplomatic space. Instead, the Galactic Confederation chose a location that would become legendary: the quantum-stabilized observation deck of the Nexus Station, positioned at the gravitational intersection of 3 dying stars. Dr. Elena Chen stood at the center of an immense holographic space that seemed to breathe with living potential. Around her, the representatives of 200 stellar civilizations materialized, not as static projections, but as dynamic, quantum-entangled presences that defied traditional understanding of spatial representation. Humanity is not a species to be categorized, Elena began, her voice carrying through multiple layers of communication matrices. We are a process of continuous universal potential. The assembled civilizations understood now what they had failed to comprehend during the invasion. Humanity's resistance was never about survival. It was about demonstrating a fundamental truth about the nature of intelligence, adaptation, and existence itself. Dr. Kai Zheng's quantum probability matrices surrounded the ceremony, living, breathing demonstrations of potential that shifted and transformed with each passing moment. They were more than visualizations. They were a living language of possibility. Commander Maya Rodriguez watched from a secondary